Oh, cool. We are live. We are live here. I am going to see if I can. Get this set up properly. Looks like we got a few people on here. Yo, what's up, Shaheen? I'm actually gonna stream some. I'm really late for this office hours. The goal here was to have some time where I could talk to some of the YouTube audience and the Instagram audience. I'm also gonna go live here on Instagram. I know I'm super late. This is something new I want to try. If I can even figure out how to go live on Instagram while I'm going live on YouTube, this will be interesting. This shows my age. I just turned 41, so I'm clearly old for all this. Let's go here. I'm going to turn down my own headset because I can hear myself talking, which is really annoying. Here we go. Stream fix feed post or IGTV. How do I do this? All right, cool. Does anybody know how to actually stream to Instagram? Maybe I'll just try Google. Maybe let's try YouTube. Looks like we have. Hey, Gablonzer. Houlihan Loki restructuring Super Day in 2 days. Any advice? Yeah, I think for sure have some advice. First off, breathe. Restructuring Super Day. I was actually in Rothschild restructuring group. I think probably good to know specifically the difference between debtor and creditor side. And I think Houlihan does a lot more creditor side work where they're working with the actual creditors to negotiate against the debtors or the companies that are kind of going bankrupt. But I think an interesting question you could ask them when they say, hey, do you have any questions for us, is kind of showing that you actually understand the difference between those two. In terms of specific tips and specific questions, I highly recommend you guys go to the company database, see what you can dig out for those. Let me see what I can pull up right now. Company database. Whoops. I think you guys can see this, right? Let me make sure. Yeah. And if you go to Houlihan, let's see what we can pull up here. Let's see if anybody's helped us out here. We got 321 interview insights. There might be some good stuff in there with the restructuring group. So you can check that out. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. Let's see if I can move this off screen a little bit so you guys can see better. This is still all new to me in terms of how I'm streaming. This is the first time I've done it, so I'm sorry if you can't see everything. You know what we could do is you could filter it by like analyst. Sorry, is this a summer analyst interview or is this like an actual like full time? Not seeing it, but anyways, let me see if I can pull that up for you guys. Yeah, summer analyst. Okay, so if you go to here, there's a lot of like summer intern, associate intern restructuring. This would be a good one to look at. So for example, how would you run a screen for potential restructuring opportunities? Looks like it was an unexpected interview or difficult interview question that was asked. And this person answered it as run a screen for existing bond loan prices and recent performance, look at potential covenant breaches or liquidity issues, find particular sectors or subsectors undergoing changes. So I think as you can see, the community can answer the questions much better than I can because they clearly are getting firsthand advice in terms of specifically what's getting asked in these interviews. I'm still trying to figure out how to pop out this live chat. Let me see. Oh, sweet. I can pop it out so I can keep it here while I am showing stuff here. So hopefully you guys can see that. And I can scroll down and you can see kind of the question here. This is just one example of what's in the company database. CVP first round this Friday. Would love to get tips on that as well. Centerview. I think they're notorious for pretty technical questions, so I would get a little bit harder, drill down on the technicals, Taylor. Make sure you know all the kind of the basics of the flowing through the three statements, depreciation, how that flows through the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement. San Francisco, Palo Alto, cool. Yeah, you're right near me. I'm down in Saratoga, California, so Bay Area. Thanks, Mark. WSO fantastic. Appreciate you guys for joining. Our YouTube audience is actually tiny compared to our Instagram audience, but we're trying to change that. So this is a live stream. I'm just trying out how this works right now. This is kind of the first time. Oswin asked, did these firms already start their processes? I thought things were just kicking up applications wise. We're in mid-March right now, 2021. Things are just kicking off for a lot of firms. They're not all done, but there seems to always every year be some accelerated timelines. And it's tough to know unless you've already put it in the groundwork of networking to basically get the inside track to some of these processes that are kind of not even marketed, especially for smaller boutique firms that are like that only hire, let's say, 1 to 5 analysts per year. You're not necessarily going to hear about these processes unless you're actually actively networking. It's like I'd challenge any of you guys. How many of you in the chat here have actually have over 1,000 connections on LinkedIn? Anybody? There was actually a really good article on, so like my point is, if you guys are under 1,000, like you can, LinkedIn is so amazing and so easy to actually just get a ton of reach fast. So there's no reason why you guys shouldn't be trying. Your goal should be kind of build up this massive funnel. So think of it as like a sales process for yourself where you're selling your own services, where like you literally have, let's say, 10,000 potential bankers you could connect. Those are all your prospects. If you're messaging about 100 of them a day, about 95% of them won't ever connect with you. 5% will. Maybe 1 to 2% will get back to you. The thing is, once they're connected to you, you actually have their emails. I would get it off of LinkedIn and onto email with autoresponders and reminders going, so that every, say, you send out an initial email kind of explaining who you are, and if you'd love to chat for a short period, you hit them up again a week later when they don't respond. You wait 3 weeks after that, you hit them up again a third time, then you wait about 4 or 5 to 6 months and you kind of give them an update. So you never let that prospect go. You just start stretching out the time periods in terms of when you can actually reach them. I'm happy that people are helping each other in the chat here. This is cool. So there was actually Matthew asked best tips for laddering into another group at your bank. Matt, this is very bank specific, and all the discussions I've had, it's super touchy. So you have to be really careful. I think the best way to go about it when you're trying to lateral within an organization is actually to try to get like on a deal first with that other group if you can, by getting in and doing a lot of networking with the specific group heads of that group or the associates. Let's say you're an analyst, getting good with like the next level up of the people working in that group already, and just kind of float the idea of, hey, is it possible that I could actually, could I work with you guys potentially in a deal? I'm curious about this group. I think you guys do a lot of great work, blah, blah, blah. See if they actually take you up on it. If they're really busy and have a lot of deal flow, it's possible. What you don't want to necessarily do, if your group is somewhat vindictive or a little bit more possessive over your time, which to be honest, a lot of them are, it may actually be tough to get that internal lateral transfer. but it's something you don't necessarily want to like just go to HR. You really want to get the bankers buy-in internally from the group you want to land in, and you want to make sure you're building up that relationship before you ask for that jump. So you're not just like going over there and be like, "Hey, I'd like to work with you because you guys are doing bigger deals or better deals. Can I join you?" Because then they're going to feel awkward. They don't really necessarily want you. I think it's good if you're a top performer, obviously, and you're doing good work. It makes it much easier to make that transition. Stating the obvious, but yeah, hopefully that's helpful. But you just got to do it gradually, and you don't want to, put your neck too far out there. See what else is up here. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, would love to get advice on actually networking successfully. Is it good to always make the ask to meet with someone else at the firm? Sometimes seems inorganic. Good question, Aswin. So the idea of having to network successfully, I think one of the best things is if you're actually networking when you don't need it, when you're not looking for a job. You're putting in the groundwork. Let's say if you're a freshman in college where you're like not even sure, you can literally do so much better if you actually are doing this early on. So I have on Monkey to Millions, the series that I run. Grace is one of my mentees. She was a freshman when she started working with me. She's just set because she immediately started putting in groundwork like I instructed her to. She now has contacts at all the banks that know her. So now every time she's in a process or gets an interview, she literally has an easy way to update people. And then they're all like, "Oh, wow, you have an interview with Blackstone. Oh, wow, you already have a summer internship with Citi and you're only a sophomore. Oh, wow." Suddenly it just starts steamrolling. But the earlier you can start when you don't need it, the better. So please do that. In terms of how to make it feel more natural or more organic, I would really suggest actually not forcing the issue. So if the person seems like they want to get off the phone, you don't necessarily have to ask like, "Oh, can you introduce me to somebody else in your group?" Sometimes you can just say, "Do you know anybody else that might be worth talking to about my specific background? I'm an engineer and I'm trying to make this transition. Do you know anybody else that might be an engineer that kind of went through this transition? Or do you know anybody else who came from a non-target? Or do you know anybody else that enter your specific kind of story or your branding in that segment?" I think that would actually help a lot. So, don't force it. You definitely want to ask for anybody else at the end to try and continue that chain. And that's a very good point. But it doesn't have to be internally at their firm. It doesn't have to be internally because sometimes they could have a good friend that is going to be much more willing to listen to them to take to make that intro, and it's actually a better intro at another bank. So I wouldn't limit it to that. Here, what do we have here? Can you explain the process of full-time recruitment if one decides not to return to the bank we summered at? Yes, this is another really tricky one that's it's basically filled with minefields. You can really mess things up if you don't take the offer. Typically, banks aren't going to give you an exploding offer right away. They'll let you shop it. They'll give you like sometimes 2-tiered bonus structures where there's a sign-on that's like $20,000 if you sign on the spot or within a week or so, and then there's a second tier of bonus, like a sign-on bonus that drops to $10,000 if you wait, and then I think after a few months they pull it. But that $10,000 drop, don't get swayed by that. Like if you feel like you can get to a better bank, definitely feel free to shop that offer and do what's best for your career. That being said, you also have to know kind of what you're working with. If you are already at a non-target, maybe you have a low GPA and you manage to just get that summer analyst and do really well, I would take the offer because it's going to be an uphill battle unless you're getting a lot of bites and people seem kind of interested, or we're in what I'd call a hot lateral market. And hot lateral market meaning there's a lot of open first year or second year analyst opportunities, or there's a lot of people that you think are the yield is really low because people are deciding banking is not where they want to be. So yeah, I would just say be careful with that because you can end up with 0 offers instead of 1, and obviously that's a much worse situation. Can you guys hear me okay? This is all new. Yeah, it looks like my mic is picking up my voice, so that's good. Let me see here. Where's the chat again? I'm like so clueless with this stuff. The funny part is I think you guys are watching my live stream viewing. Here we go. No problem, Taylor. Here we go. What else are people asking? Is it normal for coverage teams not to do any modeling or valuation? I'm in FIG, but there's product groups at the bank which do most of the heavy lifting. Would this be a problem for PE? Matthew, good question. Yes, it's a problem for PE, but it depends. If you're in FIG and you're going to if you're targeting private equity funds that specialize in FIG, it's much less of a problem because you can speak the language. If you're going to most private equity shops, they're going to be the typical LBO, leverage buyout shops. They're going to expect you to know the M&A process. So if you're getting no M&A transaction experience, you're not building any operating models, anything like that, yeah, it's going to be an issue because you're going up against kids who have that experience. And so it's just going to be hard to even get the interviews. Let's see what else. Let me get some coffee. What else we got here? Okay. Mark asked how to keep the network I made at different firms during recruitment after joining a different bank. How to keep the network I made at different firms during recruitment. So Mark, I think keeping the network is just a question of like you staying up to date. It doesn't mean you need to hit them up every month. But I think it's really, really smart if you can at least ping people, at least the people you had conversations with or that responded and were nice and maybe made an intro to you. It'd be good if you hit them up at least once every 6 months. You don't want to be hitting them up every month, bothering them. But if you have like an update, like, oh, I just closed this deal. This has been great. Thanks again for so much for your advice. Then 6 months later, you say, hey, I've actually just started private equity recruiting. It's going really well. I'm doing this. Just wanted to keep you up to date. Oh, and by the way, I saw this article that I saw you guys close this deal. Congratulations. It's just kind of trying to keep that connection warm. Show them that you appreciate the advice that they gave you back in, whatever. It could be a year or 2 years prior, but just showing you really appreciate it. Shaheen says, if I work in IBD, would become really old really quickly. I don't know if that's a question. Are you asking if you would get really old really quickly, like me, like gray beard? You work about 4 years in a 2-year period in terms of hours, so or more like 3.5. But so yeah. So he's asking, if I work in IBD, would become really old really quickly, and is it okay to live 1.5 hour away from your work if you're working in IBD at Goldman Sachs? Yeah, you do age faster, I'd say, because you're more stressed out, all that stuff. I would not recommend living an hour and a half away from anyone working in any front office investment banking position. I think that's a recipe for disaster. You'll end up sometimes basically going home and then coming back straight back and not even having time at home. Because sometimes you can only get home for a few hours and then have to go back. So no, I would recommend ideally being within a 10 to 20 minute walk from the office. Or a short subway ride away. Hey guys, I gotta run because I have another call, but this was kind of a test run. It's cool to see that there were people actually on this live because I think I tried it before. I know on Instagram Live we get a lot of people. I'll do more of these. I'll try to do this, make this a weekly thing. And I'm sorry it was so short this time. I had a lot of technical difficulties since this was new to me. But I appreciate all you joining. I will be back next week. Check out the event calendar on WSO. I'll show you it's right here. If you go under resources, happy hours, events, webinars, you should see a listing of events. And this will be called office hours. So I think it's gone now because I think it's passed. Yeah, WSO office hours, Chief Monkey right here. So that'll be hopefully live stream on the site. Or just if you want to just grab it here on YouTube, that's fine too. All right. Thank you, everybody. Let's see if I can end this.